Now we got it.
All right.
Tag Mike Baker.
Okay, looking now.
Alright.
I'm tagged.
You got it?
Yep. Just going to add it to my timeline.
Yeah, put the Flaming Groovies. These are childhood friends, right? That started the band.
Oh, yeah, pretty much. There's a lot of history for over 50 years, really.
The guitarist was a 15-year-old kid. I was
Yeah,
like,
Cyril.
shit, yeah. I studied up on them a little bit.
Yeah. You got a lot of history, man. A lot of background with fucking, different members and
Oh yeah, they had a lot
of record company problems and all that shit.
Yeah, they started like with Epic or something like that.
Yeah.
The one they started with.
Hey, Irv.
Irv is watching.
Hello, Irv.
All right. Do a new show, The Rockshow.
Yep.
With me and Mike got a long day today.
Yeah, we're gonna do some shows back to back.
For all you people that don't know, welcome to The Rockshow, episode 36. No, 37.
37 now. Yep.
And this is the Flaming Grooves.
Flaming Groovies episode.
Groovies. Flaming Groovies.
Yes.
Let me see. We're going to be doing a few shows back to back. You're still going to be getting a show every Sunday. We might change the schedule a little bit because Mike is going out for a little bit because he's getting some hernia.
It turns out I got a couple of hernias in my abdomen.
That's what happened where your balls grow this big.
No, it's not my balls. It's not a groin hernia.
It's like, well,
no, it's in my abdomen, like by my side. I don't know how it happened, but
on the side, you can get a hernia on the side.
I think so. My CAT scan's going to show it. I think.
I never heard that shit.
So, we're still going to be here putting out some shows for you guys. It's just I'm probably going to line them all up and then go out sick for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I'll probably put them up like every Sunday. But the video, you can get it right away. So we're going to have a lot of video content.
Yeah, definitely.
And we don't do the rock show. I mean, this is probably like the fourth or fifth time.
And starting next year, we're going to do a lot of rock show videos anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to be changing the format a little bit. We're going to come up with some new ideas. We were throwing around ideas yesterday about shows that might just feature like a band and recording one album, like how that went down, like the Rolling Stones doing Exile on Main Street, things like that. So we got a lot of good ideas for you people.
Yeah, I'd like to do like a Nirvana show about Teen Spirit. I think I think that's the only album I really like. I like the second album also, but Teen Spirit to me was the one that was really like. And they did a great cover. But we tried to do the Unplugged album, which I thought was great. The Man That Sold the World. That was a great version.
Yeah, it was.
They did.
It was.
So
anyway,
let's talk about these childhood friends.
Okay, the Flaming Groovies. Now,
Flaming Groovies.
Before we start, I just have to point out something. This band for me.
Oh, wait up.
Yeah.
Before you start, you were going to say you saw them this weekend.
Yes, I did. I saw them Saturday night over at the Cutting Room.
But you were pissed off at Eric.
Yeah.
What was the guy's name? Eric?
Reckless Eric.
What the fuck did he? What happened?
Reckless Eric is known for pretty much one song called "Whole Wide World," and actually that album is fantastic. It's a power pop album from the UK, late '70s. We got there now. The Cutting Room on East 32nd Street is like a supper club.
Yeah.
Okay, you sit down, tables, you order food, you watch the band, right? Well, we get there, and we had to wait a few minutes for a table, and he was already on by the time we got there. And he started ranting in the middle of one of the songs. It wasn't Whole Wide World, it was another one, where he said, about how, we put a maniac in the White House, and that there's probably people in this room that voted for this maniac in the White House. And I'm thinking to myself, first of all, shut the fuck up, all right? Because no one really wants to fucking hear your opinion.
We'll come to forget about it.
Right, I come to listen to,
music.
and I like Reckless Eric, and I've seen him before, but now, of course, he's probably got Trump derangement syndrome, like so many people. But then he says how people in this room probably voted for him, and I'm thinking to myself, first of all, you fucking asshole, shut up. Second of all, you don't understand our system. Because even if anybody voted in this room, New York State went to Hillary Clinton.
Oh, yeah, they're always going.
Before you rant and shit, just fucking know how it works. Okay, because I can see if he would. I'd love to know if he'd have the balls to say that down south somewhere.
Oh,
he probably would not. They'd string him up. So it's just it just gets me. Anyway, I mean, these people that you come to see them, you like their music, and then they go on this political rant. And it isn't just because I don't agree with the guy. Okay, it's because you pay $30, $40 for a ticket to get away from reality for a little while and enjoy some good music. Why do you I gotta hear your fucking opinion in my face?
That's why I enjoy wrestling. They never talk about politics.
No.
Even though it's fake, but I enjoy it because they don't talk about it. I just get entertained.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the Groovies went on right after that.
How were they?
They were fantastic.
And
that was my first time seeing them. The thing with the Groovies with me...
But this is like a new lineup. Maybe just with the guitarist.
Cyril is in the band. Roy Loney's not in the band anymore.
Neither is Tim Lynch.
Tim Lynch, no. Yeah. Chris Wilson retired.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think all you have now is Alexander.
Yeah.
Okay, I think he's the bass player. I think that was him. But still, I mean, they sounded great. Cyril's a funny guy. They put on a good show. They did every song you wanted to hear by them. But what I wanted to say was, with the Groovies, for a long time I didn't take them that seriously because, I don't know, to me they seemed like very Stones derivative.
Well, they were definitely Stones.
But also, like, for years, a lot of their material was very hard to find. All right, and definitely before the internet, it was very difficult.
What the hell is a power pop? I did not get that terminology.
Are you familiar with the song by them, "Shake Some Action"?
Yeah,
that's power pop. Wow. Like if you take like a Beatles song and kind of like add a little punk rock into it, it's like a heavier kind of, like Nick Lowe is power pop.
I thought it was to me, it was just rock and roll. I don't know why they label
it's all rock and roll. It's all
I thought it was more like Rolling Stones.
The early incarnation of the band was more that way, which I'm going to tell all about it now. Okay. Now, the history of this band actually goes back to 1965. You had guitarist and vocalist Roy Loney and guitarist Tim Lynch. They wanted to start a band that was kind of like a Stones blues-based band. They met up with 15-year-old Cyril Jordan, and they're from San Francisco.
But these guys were young when they met.
Well, they were a little bit older. Loney was a couple of years older, but Cyril was 15.
But I mean, Loney and Lynch, they met like in grade school.
I think they did. Yes,
that's how long they've been.
Yeah.
So these guys were childhood friends.
And to start a band together. Yeah. And about 3 years, 65 to 68, they had different lineups. But by 1968, you had the solidified lineup of Cyril Jordan on vocals and guitar. Roy Loney also on vocals and guitar. They would trade vocals. George Alexander on bass, harmonica, and vocals. And Tim Lynch on guitar, vocals, and harmonica. And then on drums, they had Danny Mim. Okay? That year, they released an EP called Sneakers. And
they released a lot of LP, a lot of singles.
Yeah, a lot of singles, a lot of EPs. It was a short album, an EP. And it actually sold pretty well for an EP, and they had put it out themselves.
Yeah, look at all this.
Right. It actually sold pretty well. Yeah, right.
So that's
first grade. Yeah. And it sold well enough that Epic Records noticed, and they actually signed them to a deal. Now, at this time...
Isn't Epic Records like a big deal?
Epic Records is a major label.
So for them, they were like...
It's really the only major label they were ever on.
Yeah, but that's incredible that they, like... When I read that, was an epic level. And they were also... didn't they start like a trio at first? They had like another band before they started?
It was they had something based on the Kingston Trio.
Yeah, the Kingston Trio.
But they weren't a trio. That was just a different band.
Just a different
band. They're kind of like similar to that.
Similar to that?
Yeah.
And then they just took the
Roy Loney had that going, in the 50s. Because he was very 50s, rockabilly influenced. Kingston Trio is like a 50s type thing. Epic got interested in them. Now, what the Groovies did at this time was very interesting. Yeah. I don't think too many bands have done this. Is their management company actually leased the Fillmore West, which was a venue, from Bill Graham, and they managed it. The band managed the Fillmore for a little while. Okay. Now, if you think about that, that would give you a lot of connections.
Yes.
And you're going to be connected also with a lot of other bands. Okay?
Yeah.
The venue, you know, everybody's going to be looking to talk with you to get booked at the Fillmore in San Francisco, which was a big stop. So that was like, to me, when I read that, I was like, that was really fucking ingenious.
Wow.
Okay? So one band they got close with was the Stooges and Alice Cooper.
Yep.
Okay? And a lot of the Detroit bands that would come through San Francisco influenced them.
Yeah.
Okay? And back and forth. And basically, that album on Epic would come out the following year in '69. It was called Super Snaz. It's a mix of like 50s bass rock and roll mixed with like an early power pop sound. Like they do a cover of like The Girl Can't Help It, stuff like that.
But to me, it sounded like very like a lot of rockabilly.
Rockabilly. Well, Roy Loney. Roy Loney was all about that. That was his influence.
And then I keep hearing like they never really say they were rock. They kept saying the power pop.
Power pop. They really couldn't be labeled. You know, they were kind of this weird mix of this classic 50s rock and roll and a 60s influenced kind of Beatles thing.
Yeah, they would play like this. One minute they sound almost like, then it sound like the Stones. Then they almost sound like a Scots band in a weird way. That it's like because they put so much stuff together. They did so much. Like they weren't. No record was the same.
No.
Which was like, holy shit.
No, I mean, there's different eras with them.
Yeah.
You know, like that, the Roy Loney era, which we're talking about now, was more blues-based.
Yeah.
But they had these elements of power pop creeping in. And that was Cyril.
Yeah.
That was Cyril's influence. And actually, the conflict of where those two bands, where it was going to go is the whole story of the Groupies, pretty much. So they did a cover of, like, Eddie Cochran's Something Else on there. Now, unfortunately, the album bombed, and Epic would drop them after that one album, but they continued to tour nationally, and because of their connections with Alice Cooper and the Stooges, they decided to sign up with a label called Kama Sutra, which was Kama Sutra Records, which was signing a lot of bands out of Detroit. And
did they make him do the Kama Sutra?
Different positions.
And also breathing exercises.
Yes, that's it. They started recording for Kama Sutra in 1970, and they would release an album called Flamingo. I love this album, okay? It was recorded at Pacific High Recording Studios in San Francisco. It had some Loney tracks on it called Gonna Rock Tonight, Second Cousin, She's Falling Apart. This was like a very 60s blues, early 60s Stones, blues-based, 50s rockabilly-ish, kind of all thrown in there. Yeah, it's a great album. Everybody should listen to this album. But the second album on Kama Sutra would be called Teenage Head, and it's a cult classic to this day. It's in the jukebox right here.
Yeah.
Okay. It was recorded at Bell Sound Studios right here in New York City in 1971.
And we're at the International.
Yes, we're in our usual spot at the International. The International has a very good jukebox.
Yeah.
Very good jukebox. Now, the interesting thing about this album, there's a story about Teenage Ed, okay? And they told it the other night at the show. Cyril told the story. Basically, you know, Cyril was hanging out with a couple of musicians that he wouldn't name, okay? They were famous. And he said that they were at some party and they were tripping and doing drugs and shit. This is like 1969, 1970. And one of them was like, yeah, where can I go get some Teenage Head? So Cyril was like, damn, that's a good name for a song. If we could get away with it, you know. But they did. And everybody knows the song Teenage Head. There's even a band named after that song, Teenage Head. And the interesting thing, too, is when they were recording at Bell Sound Studios in New York City and released that album, Mick Jagger actually caught wind of that.
Yeah, he commented on that.
And he made a very interesting comment. He said that album is better than Sticky Fingers, which came out the same year.
Yeah.
Now, think about that. Okay.
You got the Rolling Stones.
You got the Stones saying that. Yeah, definitely. Now, you got songs like City Lights, Teenage Head. They did a cover of Randy Newman's Have You Seen My Baby. Yesterday's Numbers, Whiskey Women.
The thing with them, they always added like a cover song. You know?
They did a lot of covers, which I think it works for and against you sometimes.
Yeah.
Joan Jett made a career with doing that.
Oh yeah.
You know, but
these guys always at least one cover in each album. You know, something.
No, they did most of their songs sometimes were covers, and sometimes there was reasons for that, which I'll get into. Neither one of those albums, Flamingo or Teenage Head, sold very well. And at that point, I think after Teenage Head, Loney and Jordan got a little disenchanted with the band. Okay, there was a lot of fighting going on about the direction of the band. Loney wanted to take it down a more Stonesy, bluesy direction, and Cyril Jordan wanted to take it to a power pop, Beatlesque direction. And it was starting to become a problem.
Yeah. But that's created difference, right? That's what
I mean, at that point, it's a crossroads. Yeah. You know, and what would happen is guitarist Tim Lynch would be replaced soon by James Farrell. They played a concert in 1971 after the Teenage Head album came out over in the Fillmore West in San Francisco, and it was broadcast live on KSAN, which was like a big radio station at the time. And not too long after that show, I think it was maybe a few days or a few weeks, it would all come to a head and Roy Loney would leave the band.
Wow.
Okay, so that would end that era of the Flaming Groovies.
But he was like the lead singer, right?
Jordan sang some songs, but he was mostly the lead singer. He did most of them. And he was a main songwriter. Yeah. But Jordan wrote also. Yeah. Okay. Now, right away, it was obvious Jordan was going to take over the band, and he was now going to go more in this power pop direction. Bass player George Alexander became friends with this British music executive named Andrew Lauder. Now, Lauder was responsible for signing on United Artists Records the Bonzo Dog Doo. I said it wrong. The Bonzo Dog Doodah band, okay, and also Can and Hawkwind, early band Lemmy. 1972, he got them signed to United Artists in Britain. Now, the American side of United Artists refused them. They actually tried to get on that label, but the British side was interested, so they actually ended up having to move to England. Yep. And they connected with famous producer Dave Edmunds, okay, who's known for a lot of incredible albums, Stray Cats, his own shit. He was in a band called Rockpile, a lot of other stuff. And they would actually, when they got to England, the deal wasn't exactly the deal they thought. It was a deal just for singles. I think they kind of pulled the rug from under them a little bit. Yeah. And they realized, okay, it's just going to be some singles. So they ended up doing two singles. One's Slow Death, Tallahassee Lassie on the other side, and a song called Married Woman, and Get a Shot of Rhythm on the other side of that. Get a Shot of Rhythm and Blues, excuse me. Were you going to say something?
No,
Okay.
I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah. Slow Death was like an older song that Roy Loney had actually written with Jordan, and it's one of their best songs, one of my favorites from them. It's a song about drug abuse. It's an anti-drug song, but the problem was the single got banned in England right off the bat because of the word morphine in the song, because he says a shot of morphine. Well, if you listen to the words, stupid, it's about not doing drugs.
Not doing drugs.
So how can you not mention a drug in the song?
Yeah,
you know? But the English had some strange rules back then. So the album basically died. I mean, the single basically died a quick death. Neither one of those singles did very well. No. Drummer Danny Mim would leave at that point and be replaced by Terry Ray and then finally by David Wright. 1973, they wrote the song Shake Some Action. Okay? Yep. Now, it was part of a deal with Capitol Records. They were supposed to be on an LP deal with them.
So Shake Some Action was also an album, right?
Yes, but a couple of years later.
But they had the single, like an LP almost, right? Is that what they had?
It wasn't an EP. It wasn't an EP because what happened was they wrote the song and they recorded it as a demo. Okay. But Capitol Records, at that time, they were having a shakeup at the executive level, and the deal got blocked.
Oh, shit.
Okay, so they got screwed.
They had a lot of singles for that little period of time. They took out so many. If you go with period,
some of that stuff would be released a lot of years later.
On an album or
and EPs or albums. I mean, there's a lot of greatest hits collections and stuff with different pieces and things, live versions of stuff, demo versions of stuff.
Yeah, another one that did a few live albums too. I was impressed by just the library of live albums.
Definitely. Now they released a single on Bump Records that was produced by Dave Edmonds. It was called "You Tore Me Down," and that would be released by Bump in 1974. In 1975, Bump Records owner and originator Greg Shaw became the Groovies manager.
Oh shit!
Okay, and he arranged for them to be hired by Sire Records.
Sire Records.
Okay, they were going to be signed by Sire, which at the time was an up-and-coming label. They were signing punk bands. They signed the Ramones. They signed the Talking Heads over here. They signed the Groovies as well.
So they signed a few very
up-and-coming bands. Yeah.
But when you start a record label, that's what I'm saying. You're going to hope that they make it.
Greg Shaw was an amazing guy. His story is very interesting.
Yeah.
He really had a lot of balls. He really went on a limb with some of these acts. He would release a lot of things. Everything from like the Groovies to like Stooges demos and stuff like that. Songs that the Stooges recorded but never put out because they broke up after Raw Power. Yeah. But there was songs like I Gotta Write, Give Me Some Skin, Cock in My Pocket, songs like that were never released on albums, came out on Bump like 5-10 years later.
But they probably would have had a hard time.
Cock in My Pocket? Yeah, that would be a little hard to release. But he put it out with Cock in My Pocket right on the title. But it was a small label, he got away with it.
Yeah.
Okay, now, when they signed with Sire, it was agreed that they would work with Dave Edmonds again. Mm-hmm. And this is when they would finally get a really good record deal, and the Shake Some Action album would come out. Okay, that was 1976. One thing they were lucky with when they signed with Sire is Seymour Stein, the executive CEO basically of Sire, was a big fan.
Oh, he thought they were good.
He thought they were great. He was going to push this band a lot, as much as he could. Now, one of the bad things about Sire back then, especially the first year or two of its existence, is it had very bad distribution. In other words, the label would put you in a studio, make the album, press the albums, but then a distributor was having a hard time getting it out to the stores.
Oh, so they probably had no distribution.
They didn't have good distribution. They had some but it wasn't great. Now, when the Shake Some Action album came out, which, let me tell you, people, everybody should own this album. I think it's a classic. It's total power pop in every sense of the word. If you're into that kind of sound, I think it's great. Everybody should own it. But now they were getting the full support of the record label.
Yeah.
And there was a gig coming up in London, in July 4th, 1976. Now, it's an important date, not only because of the Bison Tour, but it was also the first time the Ramones were going to go to England. Now, there was a place called the Roundhouse, and it was agreed that the Groovies would headline and the Ramones would open up.
Oh, man. Wow.
And I think there was a couple other acts on the bill, but basically it was Ramones opening for the Groovies. And I know people that have gone to these shows, some English guys, and they said this shit was fucking amazing.
Oh, the show was great?
Yeah.
You know what made me laugh when you were talking about Black Sabbath?
Yeah.
And the Ramon opening up for them, and they got shitted on.
Yeah.
I was still amazed by that.
You know, it made me think of another story too when we were talking about that. They actually opened for Johnny Winter one time in Connecticut.
Oh my God.
And not only did people boo them, they threw shit at them, including bottles. And you know what else landed on the stage? What? A carburetor. Somebody threw a carburetor at them. Like, they were like, what the fuck? So yeah, when you're a band like the Ramones, you had shit thrown at you.
Shit.
But not in England. They were well received.
No,
they were very, and everybody who was anybody coming up, Johnny Rotten, the Clash, the Damned, all these guys that were just starting out in punk bands or looking to start punk bands in England were at that show.
So let me ask. So these guys, the groups, right? They come in. They got the Ramones, right?
They're on the same label.
They're on the same label.
Yeah.
Is there one that asks? Did they? And they were an American band that they pretty much just moved to.
They kind of relocated. Yeah.
They were better received probably in England than they were here in the U.S. Did they ever have any commercial success, like huge commercial success in America?
In the States?
Like
Billboard?
No,
they didn't. If they cracked the top 200, it was a lot. Okay, wow. But no. I'll mention it later too. Is they actually in the '90s? Remember the movie Clueless?
Yeah.
That song "Shake Some Action" ended up on the soundtrack. Okay, and it actually rejuvenated the band, got people back into the band. So they never were very successful here. But like great artists, they're not always appreciated.
Not always appreciated.
And it's just how it goes. But the good news was in '77. Sire Records would have a deal with Warner Brothers, and it would be for distribution, okay, and some of their stuff would start being more readily available. James Farrell left the band over being unhappy about this power pop direction that they were going in, and he would be replaced by Mike Wilhelm. Mike Wilhelm is one of the most underrated guitar players, okay? He actually has some solo albums of his own. He was in a band prior to the Groovies called Loose Gravel, which I know a little bit about, not much. But he is a fantastic musician, and unfortunately he died this year.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, in the last few months. But if anyone has a chance to check out Mike Wilhelm, any of his material, it's really good. They were due for another album. So 1978, they would make the Flaming Groovies Now. Okay, again,
David. Also member, a new singer. Is that why?
Bands being
moving now.
Yeah, maybe.
This is dead, but this is now.
You know what's interesting is the Stones had an album called Now.
Oh, so they probably
okay. And I think even like the Chesterfield Kings did something like that. Anybody that kind of had that like '60s pop direction, garage band direction, they have albums called Now. I don't know what that is, but. That album was also produced by Dave Edmunds. You had songs like "Jumpin' in the Night," which they did the other night. 1979. Excuse me, I misspoke there. 1979 is the album "Jumpin' in the Night."
Yeah, "Jumpin' in the Night" was the album.
Yeah, that wasn't on Now. That's its old album.
They have a Flamin Groovy Now.
Right. Now is just a fantastic fucking record. But the next one, "Jumpin' in the Night," was produced by Roger Bakirian. Okay, and Cyril Jordan also gets a production credit.
So what happened to the guy that produced that?
Edmunds was supposed to produce that album, but he had gotten some new management, and they squashed it for whatever reason. I think it would have been great had he been involved. Yeah. He wasn't.
So this is "Jumpin' in the Night" with a new producer. How does this go?
Well, not like it sold anything, but it didn't do bad. I mean, they were still on Sire.
Yeah.
There was a song called "I'll Feel a Whole Lot Better When You're Gone." That's the old Bird song, which they opened up with the other night.
That's awesome.
I love that song.
That's awesome.
And you really, if you're that style of music, you can't mess that up. That's just a classic song. A song called "Yeah, My Baby," "Between the Lines." They did a version of the Stones' "Blue Turns to Gray." A song called "All I Wanted." All good shit off "Jumpin' in the Night." That's another album everybody should have. Chris Wilson in the band, he claimed that Now was his favorite album, but the problem was the band was starting to complain that Sire, even though they kind of got this distribution deal, Now really wasn't promoting them. Wasn't promoting them well. And something, the Ramones left Sire many years later over the same complaint.
Same thing?
Yeah, it took them a lot. I think the Ramones were probably a little too loyal to Sire, and they probably should have left them in the early 80s, but they left them like in 89, 90.
Oh, so
they stayed with them for a long time, but they never, especially through the 80s, they didn't promote them right. When they left Sire and went over to this new label called Radioactive, I'm still talking about the Ramones. That's when you started seeing a lot of in-store signs, a lot of promotion.
Yeah.
Even stuff on the radio mentioning them and stuff. And it was at the end of their career, but at least it was something.
Yeah.
You know?
You know what, they didn't really see a commercial success later on.
A little bit, and you know, a lot more after they were gone, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Now, Warner Brothers that year would come out with a punk rock songbook, okay? And it featured the Ramones, the Sex Pistols, and the Flamin Groovies. So they were kind of like getting lumped in with this new wave punk scene, okay? Even though they kind of were a throwback to the Beatles and 60s garage bands. They did, and these guys loved them.
No?
The punk bands loved them.
Yeah.
You know, they were definitely influenced by them. Now, okay, what was happening also is that I think Wilson was complaining that there were too many covers being done, okay? And I think Seymour Stein was complaining about too many covers. And what was happening was Cyril Jordan was trying to get more control over the rights of his own music.
Yeah.
So he wasn't recording any of his own shit until that got worked out.
Yes,
okay,
that makes sense.
He was battling with the record label too. Now, unfortunately, it would all fall apart in 1980 because Sire would drop them after the Jumpin' in the Night.
Yeah.
And a lot of fighting between Jordan and Wilson began, also between Jordan and Seymour Stein, over like what I said. They would, at that point, though, they would add a keyboardist to the band named Mark Dunwoody. They had, unfortunately, a failed recording session at Gold Star Studios in California. They were going to make an album called Tour de Force, and it was at Gold Star. Now, if you know your history, Gold Star Studios is the studio that Phil Spector used often in his recordings. And this was where the Wrecking Crew, the famous Wrecking Crew backup musicians like Glenn Campbell and all these other guys in the 60s, all those like 60s Phil Spector songs, when you hear guitar, that's Glenn Campbell.
Oh my God.
Okay. Great documentary on Netflix called The Wrecking Crew. You should check that out.
I gotta see that.
Yeah, it is really interesting. Now, unfortunately, that recording session would fall apart, and Wright and Wilson would leave the band. Now, also what was going on at this point is a lot of drug use. Okay, a lot of excessive drug use going on. Drummer Danny Mim would come back after Wright left. He would come back to the band, and one thing they did at that point was they still kept touring. At least, you could still go see the Flames.
They had a few band members for a band, so they had a few band member change. But I was looking at the list of members. They had a lot of people come and go also. Yeah. But there were people leaving and come back. What the hell was that about?
Mim, like I just said, he came back. Well, look, that happens in bands. Okay, band members return. That happens in a lot of bands. It's very musicians. Yeah. It's very hard to keep a band together. Yeah. With the original lineup, it's very hard. Drummers, because I think what happens is drummers and bass players, sometimes people think they're, replaceable. And they're not always. No, but not always. You can have a drummer imagine if the Who got rid of John Entwistle.
Oh, fuck that.
Couldn't do that. Or couldn't get rid of Keith Moon. Yeah. I mean, the Who wrote all their songs around who was drumming.
But the Beatles could have got rid of Ringo.
There's an argument for that.
I'm going to shit on that.
Bring back Pete Best.
Pete Best.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, well, Ringo's contribution is always up for grabs. Okay, up for debate. Okay, now through the 1980s, they would have various lineups and some short tours. But in 1987, they went live in a studio and in Australia, and they recorded something called One Night Stand.
One Night Stand.
Okay. 2 years later, in '89, there would be a Groovies Greatest Groovies. In other words, it was Groovies Greatest Hits.
Is that Rock Juice?
No, Rock Juice is after that.
Oh, was it Slow Death? The live album was the greatest hit?
Slow Death wasn't the greatest hits. It was an early recording of a live album. Yeah. There's a great version, I think, of Jumpin' Jack Flash on that too.
I also got a Bucket Full of Brains. That's also a live album.
Yep.
And then here's the one that I found weird. Flaming Groovy 68 and then Flaming Groovy 70. And then they must have taken out I think 78 and 68 and 70.
I think they combined it.
That's what it was?
It's something, early stuff.
Yeah.
See, because what was happening was, by like early 90s, there was a reinvigoration in the band. There was like people more interested in them, and they were interested in the Roy Loney period.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would happen is eventually they would get back together, but before that, okay, you wonder what happened to Roy Loney, right, after he left. Now, he had started in 1979 a band called the Phantom Movers.
Phantom Movers.
Okay, and they would be around in different incarnations for quite a few years. Danny Mim, when he left the Groovies, he went to go play with him.
Yep.
Okay, James Farrell went to go play with Roy Loney after the Groovies.
So
they just went back and forth.
Yeah.
They had they had a few albums. In 1995, like I mentioned, the Clueless movie was a big turnaround for them.
That was
That soundtrack was a big hit, that movie, and the soundtrack had Shake Some Action on it. And it got people interested in the band. Loney wanted to try to reunite with the band all together, have a whole original thing, but Jordan wasn't interested. Okay, but it would take quite a few years. But by 2009, we're talking almost 15 years.
Yeah, let me ask you a question. So they were together from 1965 to 1991, right? They broke up. They say 2004 was that your reunion show?
They did some reunion shows.
In 2004.
Right, in 2004. They didn't really come back.
Yeah.
It just was like a one-off thing.
Yeah.
Okay. To bring them back together.
And what happened in 2009?
Roy Loney and Jordan finally reunited. Okay. And they were backed by members of the A-Bones. Now, the A-Bones is Miriam from Norton Records. She was the original drummer to the Cramps, okay, before they got Nick Knox. She's the CEO of Norton Records. And I think at that point, Norton was involved with putting out some groovy stuff. Okay?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Norton Records is an amazing label. We could do a show just about them. I would love to speak to Miriam and talk to her about the label and her story.
Why don't we reach out to her? We could do it on the Rockpile Presents.
Yeah, I mean, she's an interesting person. I've never met her. Her husband, Tom, passed away about 2 years ago. And I think everything's kind of fallen on her to run the label. They also put out, I mean, so much stuff. They have a store in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I think they still do, I think, that opened a few years ago. A little tiny store on Washington Street in the Crown Heights area. And it's a little tiny store, but it's all filled with albums and CDs.
Wow.
It's cool. Now, they would get back together with the A-Bones backing them.
Yeah.
And a band called Yola Tango. Members from them. Now, they've been around forever.
Yeah, they've been another one.
Now, do you know how Yola Tango got their name?
How?
What does Yola Tango mean in Spanish? I got
it. I got it. Yeah.
Right? They were huge Mets fans. Okay? So, it's a reference to like when you're going to catch the ball. Like Yola Tango. Yeah, I think because there were some Spanish players that,
Yola
said,
Tango.
Yeah, like Felix Milan or something like that. Okay? And what they were doing at this point when Loney joined the band is they were concentrating strictly on like Flamingo and Teenage Head and the early stuff.
That's
okay,
good.
They weren't doing any of the power pop stuff afterwards. 2012, George Alexander on bass, and Wilson on guitar put the Groupies back together. They got a guy named Victor Penalusa on drums, and they were paid $75,000 to go play Australia.
Damn, that's what I mean.
You couldn't turn that down. All right, and they actually, on the heels of that, they would actually play some sold-out shows in Japan. And on May 4th, there was a club called the Elbow Room in San Francisco that sold out within 24 hours.
Wow.
And it's memorable because Roy Loney was in the audience watching the show. He didn't go up on stage, but he was there.
But he was there? So when did they release this Rock Juice album?
Rock Juice was in 93. 93. Okay? And it was basically an album
How was it 93? Oh, it was a best album. 93, they already broke it up.
In 91, what they did was, in 89, they actually, on the heels of the Groovies, Greatest Groovies album, they did an 80-day, 80-city tour. Somebody convinced them to do this, which was nuts. Right. In Europe.
Yeah.
Okay? and it fucking busted the band up.
Oh yeah,
you can't. They were older guys already by that point. There was no way you're going to do that. All right, and it didn't work out. I don't even know if they completed the tour.
Who put this stupid shit?
I don't know. 80 nights and 80 days. Yeah, I mean, how do you do that? The album of demos would be released in '91 called Step Up, and then '93 was Rock Juice, which was really another album, just demos.
Oh, like just
okay,
demos.
Yeah, but. Flash forward to 2012 now. They did these shows in Australia and Japan, back home in San Francisco. And it's kind of like, maybe we should get this back together somehow. Okay? But in 2016, a single would be released called Crazy Macy, with the B-side being Let Me Rock. And they finally released a new album called Fantastic Plastic in September of 2017. Now, this was not the Roy Loney stuff.
It's a whole different,
okay.
It's a whole brand new album.
It was Cyril's version, and I have the album. It's good.
Is it good?
Yeah, it's a good album. I'm trying to remember, did Norton put it out? I can't remember. It might be. That could be wrong. It might be on the Norton label. It was at that point that Jordan said, we're going to reform the band, go on tour. He got Wilson, and they got a guy named Chris Von Snyder on bass. And here's what's interesting: Tony Sales on drumming.
Wow.
Now, do you remember who Tony Fox Sales is? Remember the show we did on Bowie?
Oh yeah.
Okay, Tony Fox Sales was Soupy Sales' son.
Oh yes.
And he played with Bowie a couple albums with Iggy, Tin Machine.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now his son is Tony Sales.
And
he played with the Groupies.
When I wrote the name and I looked at it,
familiar, right?
I'm like,
yeah.
Tony Sales.
The music world is incestuous.
Yeah.
Everybody's related to everybody else. There was a guy named Adam Ellis on bass as well, and they would bring Roy Loney in as a guest vocalist for some of the stuff, but he would only be on the U.S. tour. He was supposed to go to Europe, and right in the middle of the way to get on the plane, in June of that year, he falls down at the airport and gets hurt.
Oh,
and he ends up in the hospital, and they had to leave. They had to leave without him and continue the tour in Europe without him.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and at this point, Chris Wilson retired, so he's not in the band anymore now. No. But I saw them the other night. And as long as Cyril is there, it's a good band.
What was the lineup? There was only Cyril was the only one?
I think Greg Alexander might have been in that, but I'm not sure. They didn't introduce anybody.
Say Alexander left the band.
It could have actually been, the bass player could have been that Chris Von Snyder.
And Wilson went on hiatus.
I don't know. It might have been Tony Sales on drums. I don't know. Yeah. He actually sang a couple of songs, the drummer, but where I was positioned, I couldn't see him.
Oh, shit.
Okay, I was kind of a little too far to the right. So I'm going to look that up. I'm not sure who they got exactly at this moment.
Yeah.
But Cyril Jordan was there. He looked great. He was having a good time. The crowd loved it. You know, they have like a very strong cult following. I like that about that band.
They're like movies. Movies got cult following.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, bands do too. That's the story of the Flamin Groovies, Rob.
How long did they play for the show? It's like
a little over an hour. A little over an hour and 10 minutes maybe.
Probably about 12 songs.
Something like that.
That's not bad.
When they did, let me tell you, they did a nice long version of Shake Some Action early on in the set, which I was surprised. And Encore, I was hoping they were going to do Slow Death, and they did it. Now, again, like I said before, this is the first time I ever seen them. And Slow Death is one of my favorite songs from them, and I've seen so many people cover that song, like the Dictators.
Yeah.
The Handsome Dick Manitoba always does that song. You know, but I never saw the original band do it. So it was cool.
It was cool. So not bad. So in terms of it was a good show. And you had
Reckless Eric being a dick.
Yeah.
But he was all right musically, but just until his rant.
All right. So what do we have coming up in the next couple? What's dope? First album of the week.
Album of the week. Well, you know, the Groovies are an interesting thing because there's kind of like this early blues-based stuff and then the later power pop stuff. If you want the blues-based stuff, get Teenage Head.
I was going to say Teenage Head. That's the album, man.
If you want to, experiment more in the power pop stuff, which actually was more profitable for them over the years, Shake Some Action. Get that whole album.
But those
blown
three
away.
albums are back to back, so it was like
Kind of.
Talking
There's only 3 years apart.
Head, and then,
4 or 5
then
years
that's
apart.
it. So you can change your sound a lot in that
It was like
time.
a 5-year period,
Wow.
but they were evolving.
How different were they for Sabbath that would take albums almost every year?
Yeah. It wasn't because the Groovies couldn't. They just nobody gave them a fucking chance.
Yeah.
And they were getting screwed over by record labels and whatnot.
Song of the day.
Song of the week.
Song of the week.
For the Flaming Groovies.
Yeah.
Wow. Slow Death.
Slow Death.
Always going to be one of my favorites.
All right, so people, you got it. That is the story of a band of childhood kids that made a band. And by the end of it,
I got the shirt.
That's a great shirt. Oh, you got that at the concert?
I got that at the show, yeah.
It's a fucking great shirt.
Yeah. I got Sandy one. You know what it says?
Yeah.
Teenage Head. Making sure she's got a nice tight shirt.
Teenage Head. So people, remember, don't get drunk, get lumped up. And what we have for them next week?
Next week we're going to probably talk about the Dam.
The Dam. Oh my God, we saw the Dam, and we got a lot to talk about.
They were amazing.
All right, people, have a good one. Fuck off. Have a nice day, and I'll see you next week.
Later.